let me run this by both of you. What do you make of kind of the Democrats' evil plan that seems kind of commonly accepted right now? Like they knew that Joe Biden was sick and they were going to just try to run out the clock so that he could die in office or step down and hand it over to Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I'll go to Luke, I guess, first, and then Hannah Claire.
No, that was the plan. That's what they wanted to do. And I think that's why Kamala was playing ball as much as she was, because she was like, I'm going to get in a position of power. But I think things definitely, if you look back at the way that it all unfolded, Biden dropped out as soon as the assassination attempt didn't work on Trump. So as soon as the attempt didn't work, they're like, holy cow. He released a statement. It was a weird kind of signature too. There was a lot of lore about him dropping out, and they had to fight it every step of the way here. And I think the plan was no primary because they were really afraid of RFK Jr. Winning the primary. They were afraid of other populist voices winning the primary, and they're like, we need to control this party. We need to be undemocratic, which they were.
Right.
And I mean, imagine the situation. I mean, that's the scenario that I just proposed a few minutes ago. Biden wins, stays in office, Trump's assassinated, and now we're going to have a President Kamala as he would step down.
I mean, it seems like they had innumerable kind of avenues to try and pull this off. At least,
I mean, people were talking about Kamala becoming president when she was running for the presidency of the United States. People were saying that Joe Biden is just going to give it to her, and Joe Biden just is going to drop out before the election.
I don't know that the DNC was ever that supportive of Kamala Harris, and I think also you'd have. I obviously think some people knew that Biden was sick, but I wonder how widely it was known when he was nominated by the DNC. Because to be able to say, like, okay, you're going to run as president, and we know that you are sick enough where you're going to pass away, let's say, or have to resign. Like, I'm not trying to be morbid, during your time in office, and then Kamala will get in. You know, whatever it is, like he has to leave, or he would like Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation. Yeah. You know, I would assume that Camp Biden, the people who have been staffed with him for most of his many decade-long political career, who made it through his vice presidency and things like that, they wanted to keep his illness as tight-lipped as possible at that point. It was different when he then had to start interacting with members of the DNC, interacting with people at the White House. I mean, it seemed like more of a cover-up after he got into the White House to me. So I would wonder if like the 4D chess strategy is maybe a little bit of a reach. I definitely think that people who are supporting figureheads like Joe Biden, people who have been in office, their staff around them who've made their career and their bones off of tying their name to this person's political legacy, they were going to do whatever they could to keep him in the highest office possible for as long as possible. And to me, that almost makes me think that they were like, they didn't care about Kamala Harris at all. They're like, she's good enough for this ticket, and we'll deal with the next bridge when we have to detonate it.
What do you make of, like, let's start a list of people that had to know. I'll start. Jill Biden. She had to know, right? I mean, she had to know. Kamala Harris. She had to know.
But do you think she knew when she agreed to be his vice president?
Oh, well, that goes in. No, but I mean, that would depend on the cancer timeline. If he had it then or not, you know, that's the question.
Like, I think his chief of staff knew. I think probably whoever was running his campaign knew. But like, maybe they would tell Kamala Harris, so she would be like, yes, I'll do it, knowing that this is my easy way into the White House. Yeah. But also maybe they wouldn't do that because they couldn't trust her and her team to keep it a secret.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, at some point they told her, though. Like, whether it was the medical emergency in Las Vegas that happened while he was still president, I mean, at some point she was briefed that he could croak at any time. Like, I am not an oncologist. I did some cursory research. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. You don't get stage 5 cancer overnight. It is possible if you're a civilian. You know, you haven't had any medical care in 10 years. You ignored X, Y, and Z. You finally go in. They're like, oh, you know, you have 6 months left. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
But the president, you're getting checked like every year, probably multiple times a year. And I just think that the White House doctor, the medical team, I would argue that what they did was treasonous to not share that the sitting president had a terminal disease. Like the American people have to know. Like we have to. They have to. I feel like. I mean, I feel like it would be hard to make a case to not tell people. And why don't you tell people?
Well, if you look at what happened with FDR, I mean, his wife was pretty much running the presidency of the United States, and there's multiple cases where the wives step in. If you're Jill Biden, right, you're like, yes, I get to run things, I get to call the shots here. And you know, a lot of people are making the argument that she actually was running things during Biden's presidency. I mean, the guy was not answering any questions. The guy clearly was not of sound mind. We're going to be investigating this, and it's good to see Donald Trump saying, yeah, we got to look into this auto pen scenario and situation, because I think it highlights a situation where the guy was so out of it. The guy was probably dealing with treatments. The guy would probably was dealing with...
I've seen it, right? If you've ever seen anybody who gets chemo, especially like... I had a cousin who's in his 20s and he died from colon cancer. He had like something like 50 rounds of chemo, some insane record number of rounds of chemo.
It was Woodrow Wilson, sorry, too, as well.
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
But like, you know, you start getting those chemo treatments, you're not all there for several days, especially once you're already sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Once you're already sick and the cancer is in late stages, those chemo treatments are putting you out for a week at a time. You know, you're not coming out of bed. You're, you know, completely out of it. If he's stage 4, it's possible it wasn't like, it's possible that he developed it while he was in office, but the fact that he chose to run with a terminal cancer diagnosis is very, very suspicious to me. You would think he would have known by that point, hey, it's stage 3, it's stage 4. Like Biden wasn't getting chemo. I don't think he was.
Yeah, I think it went as far as Obama knowing. I think the Obama's knew.
Obama knew. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So do you think if he got diagnosed while he was in the White House, like what's the reason for announcing it now? Do you think the end
because
of
the book's coming out? The end. He's going to be dead by summer.
Or he was being scooped, or Trump was working on charging him. I think either of those two possibilities.
The book is coming too in 2 days.
Yeah,
makes sense.
It is kind of crazy they put it out right before the book.
Yeah. There's going to be a whole bunch of
marketing PR people use that as a book launch. Is another question that I think we need to
I think one that is desperately trying to save, one that knows 100 or 1,000 of their peers are going to be implicated in this cover-up and wants to, you know, make sure that they are far removed from it. You know, that kind of person. I mean, if you're covering up that this guy clearly had borderline dementia, now we know for a fact he has cancer. And I mean, it's not like skin cancer. I think that the hundreds of people that were covering that up are the exact type of people that would then use that to market their book. You know, it's just, I think evil doesn't really pick what they want to do. You know, I don't know. I think the timeline is somewhere around, you know, 2022, 2023. They knew for sure he was sick. But I think with that diagnosis, why would you even run him? Like, they had to know he wasn't going to survive a second term then. The plan had to always be to make Kamala the first black independent woman of color then.
This is where I go with, I think the Biden camp, I don't think the DNC and the Biden camp and like the Biden machine were operating cooperatively at that point. If you guys remember, people were asking him, like, basically at the start of his term, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? Yeah. And there were mixed arguments. Like when he campaigned, he suggested very strongly, I think he even said it at one point, that he would only be a one-term president and then he would turn it over to the future of the party. And then he basically backtracked very quickly. Like I said, power is addictive. And at one point, he was saying that he was going to run. Jen Psaki was like, he doesn't know yet, even though, again, go back to the campaign, he indicated to be one term. And so I don't think that, you know, if his cancer diagnosis was known, you know, let's say year 2 of his presidency, even year 3, year 4, whenever it became time to make the decision about who's running, I think that the Biden administration and the DNC were probably at odds over it. And even if it wasn't the cancer diagnosis, they're at odds over whether or not he was going to be the future of the party, because the Biden and his family and his team did not want to leave the White House. And the DNC did not have the confidence in him. And that played out in the worst way for them in the election. Good for me, because I didn't want to be president again, but bad for the DNC.
Yeah, I mean, Jill certainly knew. And I wonder how many late nights Jill was rocking that auto pen. You know, I don't know. I don't know. But if she was, then she should be in prison. You were talking about Woodrow Wilson, where his wife was the de facto president for his last year, right? In office. I feel like in the modern day, I don't know. Somebody's got to go to jail. They won't, but somebody should.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the crimes that they committed, the way that they ruled, the way that they just opened up the borders and allowed an estimated 10 million people in, the way that they prosecuted people for their political thoughts and expressions was criminal. Let's just be honest with ourselves. They implemented new forms of political lawfare that were ruthless, that were evil, and almost plunged this country into a full-on banana republic. It's crazy to see how it unfolded right in front of our eyes. And now people have sympathy for this guy. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can be sympathetic of, you know, he's still a father and a husband and this kind of stuff, but I'm not going to cry when he dies. You know, what do you think, Hannah Claire?
I think you have your own sense of like decorum and humanity and be like, yes, an illness, someone in his family who cares about him is obviously going to suffer because of this. Like, we wouldn't want it for our own family members or whatever. But I just think Joe Biden doesn't have the political legacy or the personal likability to make this sort of a national tragedy. And unfortunately, you know, you'll get the same people who always would have defended him, who always would have praised anything he's done, saying this is awful, this is sad. And then everyone else is going to sort of be like quietly waiting a couple weeks. And then I think probably saying what we're talking about now, which is like, but what about the accountability? Like, it's okay, fine. Maybe Joe Biden doesn't face the consequences, but what about everyone else who made it happen? He's not a one-man band. I mean, all politicians, but definitely presidents, are heavily staffed. They don't just like sit on at the in the Oval Office and make decisions alone or gather information alone. They have advisors, they have chiefs of staff, they have families, they have, you know, all kinds of people around them who must have been aware of some of the decisions that were being made.
I think Trump can approach this smartly by focusing on the auto pen, really focus on that and not like because, you know, I mean, I think like everyone's talking about the cancer, but I think this guy was pretty dementia riddled. Like not just senior moment, that last 6 months to a year, I think he was pretty out of it. I mean, we saw it in the debate. So, you know, I think the people that were propping him up, and they're going to say they were doing it for the good of the country, I need to know who they are. And I need to know who knew and for how long. Now, do you wait 6 months till after he dies? Fine. I don't think he's going to, I mean, not to be morbid, but I don't think he's got more than 6 months left. If he's stage 4 or 5 and he has whatever that on that scale, it's like a 9 out of 10. I mean, similar people. I mean, he's not going to live the year out. I imagine he's not going to start chemotherapy at 90 years old. He wouldn't survive it.
Yeah, it would be too heavy on him. It would be too much of strain on his body and his immune system.
They'll do the thing where they cut you, where they castrate you, or they probably already did do that chemically. That'll be it, and you just ride it out, and you be happy that you live till you're 90 something. That'll be what they do.
I mean, he's up there. Let's be honest with ourselves. Life expectancy in the United States is going down.
He's already over the average age of a male. Now he's got stage 4 cancer of the butt.